On the 16th of June 1854, the three-masted ship the Joseph Rowan inched its way up the Port River from Liverpool. On board were Michael O'Loughlin, 43, his wife Ellen O'Day, 42, and their three sons, Michael James, 7, Thomas Stephen, 4, and John Peter, 2. South Australia had been sold to newcomers as an idyllic paradise in the south. The truth was, the colony was 18 years old, desperately short of working men, and nearly broke. After the 3-month voyage, passengers no longer needed to disembark into rowing boats and wade through the mud to get to land, as wharf number 1 had been built near the inlet. However, this didn't mean that the days of hitching one's skirts up and striding through the mud were over. Port Adelaide was a swamp. At high tide, the seawater surged up Commercial Street, inundating houses and shops. Disembarking onto the wooden planks of the wharf, Michael and his family would have been hit by the stench of seaweed, sewage, industry and animals. Port Adelaide was no place to stay for long. As Michael and his family staggered on their sea legs from the ship, they would have passed the Royal Admiral Hotel, built in 1849 and comfortably well above the level of the sea during high tides. They may even have stepped up into the hotel for refreshments, but over the course of the ensuing century and a half, Port Adelaide has been built higher and higher, so that patrons now have to step down into the hotel. This is most strikingly demonstrated in Lipson Street, where a building of that time still exists. Originally built as a single-storey shop, its rear windows show us the ground level during the 1850s. Meanwhile, the street level has risen higher and higher, so that now at the front of the shop, only the top portion of the front windows are visible. What once was the ground floor is now the cellar. By 1844, the Kapunda mine was regularly producing copper, and this was transported to Port Adelaide by bullock cart. This was a 3-day journey. For the return trip, passengers and supplies were brought back to Kapunda. In June 1854, Michael O'Loughlin and his family would have made this journey to Kapunda by bullock cart. The Kapunda mines had been devastated by the gold rush of the 1850s. By 1851, there were only 4 workers employed in pumping water from them. By 1854, there was an influx, particularly of Irish immigrants, who were looking for unskilled jobs above the surface where they could earn up to £1.10 a week. It is most probable that Michael O'Loughlin gained a job working above the ground at the Kapunda mine during this period. Because of a lack of housing, the Irish tended to live together in an area south of the mine owned by John and Mary Baker and later known as Baker's Flat. It was here that the Irish congregated and built their makeshift dwellings of wattle and daub, canvas, wood, sticks, tin, whatever they could lay their hands on. There were no fences, and altercations and fights were a common occurrence. For someone from rural Ireland, this would have been a shock. On the 18th of November 1855, to Michael and Ellen O'Loughlin, a son, Patrick Martin, born Kapunda. He was baptised at St John's Catholic Church at Kapunda on the 2nd of December 1855 by John Fallow, sponsors John Liddy and Mary Lysaith. There is no record of his birth. On the 5th of November 1858, a notice appears in the South Australian Advertiser selling land at Spring Creek, sections 259. Spring Creek is situated east of Kapunda and consisted of a number of permanent waterholes. On the 26th of October 1859, lease 470, from Adam Adamson, Mechanist, Adelaide, to Michael O'Loughlin near Kapunda. Section 259, 100 of Belvedere 10 acres for the term of 14 years at the rate of 5 shillings a year, and section 97 100 of Belvedere 82 acres, term 14 years, rent 5 shillings a year. Both of these sections can be seen clearly on the map, not far from ruins found on a water reserve. Viewed from section 259 can clearly be seen stone walling, which was used to support a track which had run from the ford up to the top of the hill. On an adjacent hillside, there are also ruins of a rectangular building which had been cut into the hillside. The buildings of this period were made of wattle and daub, and after 140 years they have completely disintegrated. On the 1st of January 1862, births: document B24, P46, Peter O'Loughlin, male, 1st of January 1862, the Flagstaff, District Kapunda, parents Michael O'Loughlin and Ellen O'Day. The Flagstaff, or Baggett's Flagstaff, was a trig point approximately 800 metres from where the O'Loughlins lived. On the 7th of March 1865, Michael O'Loughlin buys a new parcel of land to the north of his current house. Transfer number 9959 from David Shannon to Michael O'Loughlin of Spring Creek, Baggett's Flagstaff. Section 263 100 of Belvedere, 180 acres, originally granted 13th of August 1862 under the Great Deal to David Shannon. On the 17th of May 1865, Michael transfers the leases number 470 to Thomas O'Loughlin of Belvedere, both sections 259 and 97. The new parcel of land that Michael had bought featured a permanent freshwater creek, and satellite imagery clearly shows us an area adjacent to the creek that had been used. The following year, an advertisement appeared: White and Goodchild are instructed by Mr. Michael O'Loughlin to sell by public auction. All that valuable freehold property consisting of section 263 100 of Belvedere, containing 180 acres of excellent land situated on the freshwater creek. The whole is well and substantially fenced with posts and 3 wires, and is subdivided into 3 paddocks. There is a very substantial stone house, stable, yards and other outbuildings. The reserve on the freshwater creek, where there's always an abundance of beautiful water, is within a stone's throw of the house. 20 acres of virgin land is already ploughed, 40 acres of stubble land once cropped, 60 acres ready for the plough, the remainder is excellent pasture. The auctioneers especially invite the attention of intending purchasers to the above. Their instructions are positively to sell the property, as Mr. O'Loughlin has purchased a large block on the tableland. It is the best farm in the neighbourhood on the market. On the 1st of July 1865, an advertisement appeared in the Weekly Chronicle. Stolen or strayed from Spring Creek near Kapunda on the night of Monday the 12th, 1 grey mare, shot all round, lame in the off foreleg, branded RG near the shoulder with other brands over. 1 bay pony, star on forehead, off hind leg white, heavy in foal, branded MQ near the shoulder. 1 grey or cream coloured mare, 3 years old, headstall on, branded over the adjoining near shoulder. Any person bringing the same to Michael O'Loughlin or Bennett and Barton Kapunda will receive £3 reward, or £5 if stolen on conviction of thief. On the 18th of November 1865, in the South Australian Weekly Chronicle, a report was made on a meeting which had taken place in Kapunda on the subject of councils, wards and revenue collected. Mr. Michael O'Loughlin said he would prefer it being divided, as were several others, and the money collected in each ward would be expended in it. Mr. Michael O'Loughlin wished to propose a vote of thanks to the advertiser and the Chronicle for sending a reporter to report the meeting, which was seconded by the chairman and carried, responded to by Mr. J.M. Williams on behalf of the journals. On the 3rd of February 1866, in the South Australian Weekly Chronicle, an article appeared: sale by auction early in March, 20,000 acres of first-class agricultural land in the 100 of Julia Creek and adjoining the hundreds of Belvedere, Dutton and Kapunda. 2 months later, Michael O'Loughlin was to purchase another block of land to the northeast of Section 263. This was owned by Frederick Dutton, who 12 months earlier had purchased the entire 100 of Julia Creek. Lease number 13948, 28th of April 1866, from Frederick Hansborough Dutton to Michael O'Loughlin of Kapunda, farmer. Sections 194, 246 and 247, 100 of Julia Creek, 200 acres, with a term of 7 years, rent £40 per annum, paid half-yearly April and October. A number of days later, there was a covenant to purchase the said land at £794, payable on the 3rd of April 1873. At this point, Michael O'Loughlin may have found himself financially stretched. He had tried unsuccessfully to sell Section 263 the previous month and mortgaged the property on the 5th of May 1866 to John Farmer, gentleman of England, for the sum of £500. Redemption 1st of May 1871, interest £40 per annum, payable quarterly. On the 22nd of November 1866, a notice appeared in the Kapunda Herald and Northern Intelligencer. Notice: after this date, all horses and cattle found trespassing on sections number 238, 194, 246 and 247, 100 of Julia Creek, will be impounded and damages charged according to law. Also, all pigs, dogs, fowls, etc. will be destroyed. Michael O'Loughlin. On the 6th of December 1866, Michael O'Loughlin purchased a block of land in Bagot Street in the middle of Kapunda. Transfer number 20173 from Thede Hogan to Michael O'Loughlin of Bagot's Flagstaff Farmer, Lot 56, subdivision of Block 69 and 70, Section 1400, 100 of Belvedere. The following year, in an article in the South Australian Weekly Chronicle on expected crop yields, Mr. M. O'Loughlin of Spring Creek says that many fine paddocks, from which 30 bushels per acre were expected, will not yield more than 10 or 12 in consequence of the rust. Still, he estimates the probable yield in his neighbourhood at least 15 to 20 bushels per acre. 3 months later, Michael appears in the Kapunda Herald and Northern Intelligencer as a witness in a trial. Mr. Michael O'Loughlin was examined as to the value of the mare, considered she was worth not more than £2 and 5 shillings. In January 1869, a fundamental change took place in the way that land was sold in South Australia. Henry Strangways, the Premier, introduced a new system of land sales. The previous system allowed the wealthy to purchase entire hundreds and then to sell the individual sections later at an increased price. Under the new system, land was sold at a rate of £1 per acre, but there was a limit of 640 acres, and only one person could buy one property. A further stipulation required the owner to live on the property for 3 years, and to improve the value of the property by adding buildings, sheds, wells, fences to the value of 10 shillings in the pound. At this point, Michael O'Loughlin owns 3 properties: a house block in the middle of Kapunda, Section 263, and the northern block of 194, 246 and 247. He has a total of 280 acres, but owes a total of £1,300 due payable in 1873. On the 11th of January 1870, Michael O'Loughlin wrote a letter from Spring Creek to the Registrar of the Land Office in Adelaide. This is the only letter that exists from Michael O'Loughlin. The letter reads: Spring Creek, January 11, 1870. Sir, enclosed I send you 6 twopenny stamps. Please send me the tracings of the land to be sold in the 100 of Bundaleer on the 3rd of February next. Direct to Michael O'Loughlin, Spring Creek, Bagot's Well. 2 days later, there was a reply from the Surveyor General's office acknowledging the receipt of the letter and also forwarding the tracings of the new land to be released at Gulnare. Three weeks later, on the 4th of February, Michael O'Loughlin signs an application to purchase land on credit. The land is situated at Gulnare and consists of 287 acres on section 431 in the 100 of Gulnare. You will note that the spelling of his surname is once again wrong, whereas his signature immediately below is correct. The land in question was situated approximately 3 miles south of Georgetown. The official document, which is dated the 4th of February 1870, number 181, between the Commissioner of Crown Lands and Michael O'Loughlin, an agreement for the sale of land on credit, section 431, 100 of Gulnare, certified correct, G.J. Sanders, Surveyor General. On the 21st of March of that year, Michael O'Loughlin, realising he can no longer run properties both at Kapunda and at Gulnare, writes a letter surrendering section 263 Belvedere. The next piece of information we have is a letter written, this time from Gulnare, on the 14th of October 1870. This letter has been written by Michael James O'Loughlin and has been forwarded to the Surveyor General, Adelaide. It reads, Gulnare, October 14, 1870. Sir, after taking out a licence at Mount Remarkable to cut and remove timber from the wastelands of the Crown, would you please to forward me a permit to cut on the Crystal Brook Run, Michael James O'Loughlin, direct to the Gulnare 100 station. To the Surveyor General, Adelaide. 4 days later, there is a reply from the Surveyor General's office in document number 2225, in which they receipt his letter on the 14th of October and reply on the 18th of October. They ask him to what purpose the timber is to be applied and which portion of the Crystal Brook Run he wishes to cut on. 3 days later, Michael James replies, It's interesting to note that these 3 letters have travelled from Gulnare to Adelaide and back to Gulnare in the space of a week. This is 1870. The letter reads, 21st of October 1870, Sir, the timber I require is for fencing and building on my farm and includes gum and peppermint. The place I wish to get permission to cut on is adjoining the piece now surveyed by Mr. Smythe, west of the 100 of Gulnare. Please to send it by return of post, M.J. O'Loughlin. On the 19th of December, 1870, Michael O'Loughlin signs the official Memorandum of Agreement. This was called the Strangways Act, and it allowed farmers to buy land at the rate of £1 per acre, provided they lived on the land for a period of 5 years and made improvements at the rate of 10 shillings an acre. They were given 12 months in which to settle permanently onto the land. You will notice on the bottom of this letter Michael O'Loughlin's signature together with a mysterious Pat O'Loughlin with the same spelling. In February 1871, in accordance with the Strangways Act, the O'Loughlin family moved from Kapunda to Gulnare. The farm is bush and needs to be cleared before crops can be sown. On the 1st of May 1871, Michael O'Loughlin, now no longer able to run both Kapunda and Gulnare farms, loses section 263 Belvedere for failure to repay the mortgage. 2.5 months later, tragedy strikes. Peter O'Loughlin, the youngest son of Michael and Ellen, dies suddenly at Gulnare. The death certificate reads, number 1680 of 1871, District of Clare, 21st of August 1871, Peter O'Loughlin, male, 9 years, son of farmer Michael O'Loughlin of Gulnare. Handwritten across the certificate is the following: correction to this document. This information was given on the supposition that it had taken place with no intention to deceive. Signed, Michael O'Loughlin. On Saturday the 13th of January 1872, an advertisement appears in the South Australian Chronicle and Weekly Mail. It reads, "Unreserved sale at Georgetown. William Geo Goodchild is favoured with instructions from the assignee of Michael O'Loughlin to sell by auction at Georgetown, Gulnare, as above. 8 capital draft horses, a team of 6 good bullocks and a dray complete, a new reaping machine, Ralph and Carter's, 1 winnowing machine, 2 single furrow ploughs, a double furrow plough, a scarifier new, 2 pairs of harrows, 4 sets of harnesses, 4 cows, 8 head of young cattle, 4 pigs, and a spring cart and harness. Also, from 1,200 to 1,500 bushels of good clean wheat, bagged and stacked at Georgetown. Terms, cash." 3 weeks later, at Georgetown, a meeting is held in which a Mr. Welsh proposes that work should commence on a road. The motion is seconded by Mr. O'Loughlin. Mr. Smallcombe then speaks about the fact that they need a JP. The motion is seconded by Mr. O'Loughlin. On the 14th of June 1872 begins the ongoing saga of the problems between O'Loughlin, Macaulay and the pound keeper. Patrick Macaulay was a farmer who lived at Gulnare and was continually in conflict with the pound keeper Peter Matthews. Under questioning from Mr. Hosier, Macaulay states that the paper with my signature attached is a settlement between myself and O'Loughlin for damages done by pigs. At the time I gave the pound keeper a promissory note for £2 and paid him 30 shillings for my pigs being impounded. Peter Matthews, the pound keeper at Gulnare, stated that on March 20th, 20 pigs were impounded with damages of £3 10 shillings. On April 12, damages amounting to £2. The papers were presented to the court. On March the 2nd, Macaulay impounded O'Loughlin's cattle, the costs amounting to 16 shillings. On April the 1st, he impounded them again with damages of £1 10 shillings. On the same day, he impounded the cattle again with the amount of £1 1 shilling. O'Loughlin and Macaulay settled their accounts at my house, each agreeing to charge no damages to the other. However, 2 months later, full-scale war has erupted. At the local court in Clare, Wednesday, August 14th, 1872, before Messrs Farley, Gleeson and McNamara, O'Loughlin versus Macaulay. Claims for 19 shillings and 9pence, excessive damages charged on impounding cattle. Mr Hosier for the plaintiff, Mr Palmer for the defendant. Michael O'Loughlin in sworn statement. I'm a farmer from the Gulnare Plains and I had 8 head of cattle impounded by the defendant on the 10th of May last, and he put 2 shillings and 6pence a head damages on them. They were impounded from a haystack. The haystack's only partly fenced in. It's only got 2 wires and the posts are very weak ones. They're a little thicker than my arm. I released the cattle from the pound and I paid the money under protest. Under cross-examination from Mr Palmer. Well, it was on May 16 when the cattle were impounded, and the defendant often complained of my cattle trespassing, and I swear there were only 2 wires to the fence. I won't swear there were no cabbages or lettuces growing in the enclosure. I examined the wires with James Noonan, and there was only 1 or 2 panels with only 1 wire. Under examination from the bench. And the fence was not strong, even when there were 3 wires. Peter Matthews, sworn. I'm the pound keeper at Gulnare Plains. I got the information respecting the cattle written in the impounding book from Mr Macaulay. Mr O'Loughlin wrote out his protest when he released the bullocks. James Noonan, sworn evidence. Well, I'm a farmer at Gulnare and I know Macaulay's haystack, and I went to see it on May 16 with O'Loughlin, and the fence is partly made from 2 wires and partly 3, and they're very weak and imperfect. Under cross-examination from Mr Palmer. Well, I examined the fence after the bullocks were impounded. I've seen cattle go through that fence without injuring it. Under examination by the bench. The haystack was a small one, and the fence was only 5 or 6 feet from the stack, and the stack was in a paddock that was left open for the road. James Macaulay defendant, sworn. Well, I'm a farmer living in the Gulnare Plains, and I remember the plaintiff's cattle trespassing on my land on May 10. Now, I had a 2-wire fence around that haystack until the plaintiff's cattle made a habit of coming to feed there, and I afterwards put up 3 wires partly round. I saw the fence after the trespass, and it was greatly damaged by the bullocks. Under cross-examination from Mr. Hosier, well, the haystack is in an open section and stray cattle can get to it. Judgment for the plaintiff for the amount claimed and costs. On the 21st of November 1872, at a meeting held in Georgetown on the formation of a district council, Messrs. Gilrick and O'Loughlin dissented. Just 3 days later, tragedy once more befalls the O'Loughlin family. Peter O'Loughlin, the youngest son, dies a second time. His death certificate reads, number 1685 of 1872 Clare, November the 24th, 1872, Peter O'Loughlin, male, 11 years, son of Michael O'Loughlin, farmer, Gulnare, cause of death, convulsions, idiot since birth. Place of death, Gulnare, signed, Robert Canavan, of Georgetown, 27th of November 1872. It is a further 6 months before Michael O'Loughlin's name appears again in public. On the 7th of July 1873, lots 33 and 34 of Section 4 Georgetown, later to be the O'Loughlin House, are transferred from Charles Burney Young, Adelaide, to John Brodie Spence, banker. On the 6th of October 1873, Michael makes an application to complete the purchase of a credit selection. To the Honourable the Commissioner of Crown Lands, I, Michael O'Loughlin of Gulnare, being a credit purchaser of section number 431 in the 100 of Bundalia, containing 287 acres, under the agreement dated the 4th day of February 1870 and numbered 181, hereby apply to complete the purchase of the land comprised in the said section by payment of the sum of £358 15 shillings, being the amount of purchase money named in the said agreement. And I do solemnly and sincerely declare that I have made substantial and permanent improvements on the said land to the amount in value of £201 sterling, being to the extent of 10 shillings per acre on 287 acres of land. The particulars whereof are set forth in the statement appended hereto, and I have bona fide resided on the said land for 3 years, and have fulfilled all the other conditions of the above-mentioned agreement. Particulars of improvements herein before referred to. Dwelling house, a house of 3 rooms, wall 16 foot from the level, covered in with galvanised iron, £80. Farm buildings, a dairy, £10, a stockyard, £8, a piggery, £3, a large shed, £12, total £15. Wells or reservoirs of water, 62 feet deep, timber and stone lined, £35. Fences, 147 chains of fencing, £53. At the bottom, he writes, I forgot to mention £18 I paid for a dairy, total £219. Declared before me at Georgetown this 6th day of October 1873, signed M. J. O'Loughlin for Michael O'Loughlin. A note at the bottom states, Mr. M. J. O'Loughlin makes the declaration for his father, Michael O'Loughlin, who is very ill. Signed, H. W. Smith, J.P. The reply from the Surveyor General's office is number 3303 and acknowledges receipt of the letter on the 6th of October from Michael O'Loughlin concerning section 43100 of Bundalia, application to complete the purchase of. It notes there are no enclosures and answers on the 18th of November 1873, number 3668. It is then forwarded to the Crown Lands Office in the report of the Inspector and the Valuator on the 24th of October 73. It is then forwarded to the Inspector and Valuator on the 27th of October 73. On the 1st of November 1873, from Jamestown comes a reply. Sir, I have the honour to acknowledge receipt of your minutes number 13073, calling for the report in the case of Mr. O'Loughlin's application to complete purchase. You do not say inspection, but simply report. I called in at M. O'Loughlin's when I was engaged in inspecting his son's land on the 15th of September last, and he told me he had contemplated applying for permission to complete his purchase. I did not make any special inspection, but I think I saw enough by simply glancing around me to say that you would be warranted in allowing him to complete his purchase. The value of the improvements would only amount to £143 10 shillings. Sir, your obedient servant, Conrad Warnham, Sub-Inspector. To Charles Bonney, Inspector and Valuator, Adelaide. In response to this report, Charles Bonney writes, "Return to the Crown Lands Office with a report of the Sub-Inspector. The value of the improvements given by the applicant is in excess of the required amount, and as the Sub-Inspector reports that a sufficient amount has been expended to carry out the condition of the agreement, I recommend this application be granted. Charles Bonney, Inspector, 11th of November 1873. Application approved on the 13th of November 73. Returned to the Surveyor General." 2 weeks later, Michael O'Loughlin makes this will. This is the last will and testament of me, Michael O'Loughlin of Gulnare, in the province of South Australia, farmer. I direct that all my debts and funeral and testamentary expenses be paid and satisfied as soon as conveniently may be after my decease. I give, devise and bequeath unto my wife Ellen O'Loughlin, to and for her own use and benefit, absolutely, and my household furniture and effects of every kind within my house, together with all the cows and dairy utensils. I direct that all my agricultural machines, implements and tools, together with horses, excepting my pony and saddle and bridle, which I hereby bequeath to my son Patrick, and 1 horse which my son Michael is privileged to select and retain, shall be sold publicly or privately by my executors hereinafter named, and the proceeds equally divided among my sons Thomas, John and Patrick. And I further will and direct my executors to get in and sell all wheat or other crops, and to sell to the highest bidder all that section of land in the 100 of Bundalia comprising 287 acres, and all or other real estate I may die possessed of. And I apply the proceeds or sum realised in the manner following, that is to say, they, my executors, shall pay the whole of the purchase money now outstanding for the 2 allotments in Georgetown, and the 20 acres in the suburbs hereof, complete whatsoever portion of the cottage may be unfinished at the time of my decease, and execute a conveyance of the fee simple of the above described township and in suburban land unto and for my said wife, and further to pay or cause to be paid to her the sum of £200 sterling. And lastly, I will devise and bequeath all of the rest, residue and remainder of the said money so realised, after deduction, the sum of £10 to be paid by my executors to the Reverend John Pulhuber, in token of respect and esteem, shall be equally apportioned amongst my before mentioned sons Thomas, John and Patrick. And I constitute and appoint my son Michael O'Loughlin, Robert Canavan, storekeeper at Georgetown, and Michael O'Brien of Gulnare, farmer, to be executors of this my last will and testament. In witness thereof I am unto set my hand this 27th day of November 1873. Signed, Michael O'Loughlin. Signed by the said Michael O'Loughlin, as and for his last will and testament, in the presence of us present at the same time, who at his request in his presence and in the presence of each other have subscribed their names as witnesses: Jas Wilshire, chemist, Georgetown; Matthew O'Halloran, farmer, Narrady. On the 12th of December 1873, the land grant was finalised for section 431, 100 of Bundalia, to Michael O'Loughlin of Baggots Well, farmer. 6 days later, Michael O'Loughlin died. His death certificate reads number 1688 of 1874, District of Clare. Michael O'Loughlin died 18th of December 1873. Male, aged 62 years, farmer, Gulnare. Usual residence, Gulnare. Cause of death, dropsy. Place of death, Gulnare. Signed, Robert Canavan, Clare, 10th of January 1874. On the 20th of March 1874, a notice appeared in the Northern Argus. Splendid freehold property on the Gulnare Plains, 3 miles from Georgetown. J.W. Gleeson has received instructions from the executors in the estate of the late Mr. Michael O'Loughlin to sell by auction on the premises Thursday, March 26, 1874. Section 43100 of Bundalere, comprising 287 acres. This is all first-class land and well supplied with timber and has an inexhaustible well of fresh water in it. It has a comfortable 3-room stone house, dairy, barn and other improvements. The whole is substantially fenced and subdivided. 3 draft horses and harness, horse drays, scarifier, reaper, plough, harrows and other sundries, terms cash. The farm was sold on the 1st of August that year to Patrick Macaulay, Gulnare. On the 9th of May 1874, a notice appeared in the South Australian Chronicle and Weekly Mail. Notice is hereby given that all creditors and others having claims against the estate of Michael O'Loughlin, deceased late of Gulnare in the province of South Australia, are required on or before the 30th day of June 1874 to send to Robert Canavan of Georgetown, storekeeper, their Christian names and surnames and full particulars of their claims, and after the above date the executors will distribute the assets of the said Michael O'Loughlin, deceased, or any part thereof, regarding only the claims of which the executors have had notice. Dated 7th day of May 1874, Michael O'Loughlin, Robert Canavan, Michael O'Brien, executors. The O'Loughlin house was finally completed on Lot 33 South Street, Georgetown, and Ellen O'Loughlin and her family moved in 1874. On the 5th of May 1876, in the South Australian Chronicle and Weekly Mail, a death notice appears. O'Loughlin, on the 5th of May at his mother's residence, Georgetown, of typhoid fever. Patrick Martin, 4th son of the late Michael O'Loughlin of Georgetown, aged 20 years and 6 months, R.I.P. Buried in the Georgetown Cemetery in locations unknown are the following: Peter O'Loughlin, 11 years, 1862 to 1872. Michael O'Loughlin, 62 years, born Ireland 1811, died 1873. Patrick Martin O'Loughlin, 20 years, born 1855, died 1876. Ellen O'Loughlin, née O'Day, 84 years, born Ireland 1812, died 1896.